Hey y'all, thanks for watching. This is my channel, Fate Weaver Tarot. My name is Kevin. This is my first video, so for the first topic I thought it would just be pretty cool to talk about some of the reasons why, as a tarot reader, I think the tarot is really cool and kind of, what it can do for people on a level that's healthy and helpful and appreciated. Um, so, before I get into that, perhaps it would be wise to just kind of share a little bit about myself and just a brief rundown of how I got into the tarot and why I'm making these videos. So, I've been reading tarot for 5 years. I started with the Thoth deck and just kind of stumbled into it, not really sure what I was doing. Mostly it was just reading a lot of books and reading with myself a lot, or trying to, and just kind of tracking my experience and kind of building my own stories with the cards, I guess. And then about 3 years ago, or excuse me, 2 years ago, um, some friends of mine discovered that I had a personal relationship with it, and they sort of dragged me out of the closet, and so I began to read for people other than me on a pretty regular basis, and that just sort of grew into me doing it on the internet. I have a website, fateweavertarot.com, and there's a link below, and I've written somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 articles and also wrote 34 weeks of these tarot scopes. And I took a break because they're community funded, and the funding ran out for a little bit, and that was actually really convenient because I have a lot of things going on this summer. So I'm about to make a small move, um, life move that is, and um, and then I'll be revisiting them. So um, so yeah, and if you have any interest in more information, I've done a lot of events, and some of that is on the website. And you can check out a lot of my relevant experience and things I've been involved in, and testimonials and stuff like that on my website. Um, so yeah, and regarding these videos, it's just a lot of people that I know have asked me to do a class, and I definitely have intentions to do like a real class. Um, Sometimes I have a hard time telling people. I think a lot of people want to be told this is how you read tarot, and I never really kind of wanted to be the person to tell people that. I mean, I think it's a really personal thing, but the more that I've thought about it, the more I've realized that there are definitely things that help um, facilitate the relationship, because I think that sometimes it can be very confusing in a way that is not good for, um, in terms of like clogging our minds and making our experiences more complicated than they need to be. And so kind of understanding time and place and ways to make it constructive every time versus, you know, just kind of polluting the psychological atmosphere. And that's sort of what these videos are intended for, is more of kind of like a cut above in terms of what I think a lot of people are either approaching teaching tarot as, or expecting to be taught as. I'm trying to go a step above by talking about like the very general kind of guidelines, um, and not like the guidelines, but just things that are I've found to be really helpful, and kind of bringing the discussion that way instead of this card means this and this card means that, and um, that sort of thing. So anywho, so I thought it might be cool to just kind of start with, for today, for this video, a little bit about why I think the tarot is cool, and how it's helpful. Um, So to start with the first one, the tarot historically is a fascinating subject unto itself, but it hasn't changed really in like 500 years. Um, and by changing, I mean like the basic structure of it. Like a lot of the times, like the names of the cards are pretty much the same. The general themes are usually very similar. Even though they're communicated differently, they still retain that kind of like archetypal feel that sort of like unites all of tarot as like sort of like a singular tradition in a way, but with many different perspectives that correspond under one roof. So that's a really cool thing because it kind of is like a library that transcends culture. It's a really interesting like visual library, abstract kind of like art gallery library type archetype lexicon uh, thing, which is really cool. And I mean, on top of that, it really is just like a 78-piece art gallery in the pocket. I mean, that can just be number one. 78-piece art gallery in your pocket, awesome. Um, the second thing that I think is probably one of the cooler aspects of tarot to me is, and this is kind of what a lot of these videos are going to explore, is this theme of like the tarot becoming an extension of thinking. I don't want to give away too much in the first video because it'll cause it to run on a little bit longer than it probably needs to, but um, yeah, that idea of like seeing the world through an alternative lens, um, thinking in a different layer of context, beyond just the verbal phonetic language, and like speaking in our minds, like seeing these pictures and having kind of like a picture dictionary for associating to our experience, which I think is really cool. Um, Three, it is a really interesting way to study the world. And that kind of goes along with number two, but the tarot is really like, well, I'm not going to say is really like, but in some cases it is like, to an occultist perspective, well, for anyone who wants to study Western tradition, let me just say that, like subjects like Hermeticism and alchemy and Kabbalah and these types of things, astrology, not s astrology a little bit less so, but there's correspondences there. Anyone who wants to study those kind of like fascinating subjects, um, the tarot is a really, really, really excellent tool, that enables one to kind of like directly engage with the more like visual aspects of what some of these ideas are communicating, and just to feel them in a different way than the way like text describes them, because a lot of these books out there on these subjects are so dry and people just kind of talk to you like you're a plebe, and like it's just it can be really pretentious, grinding through some of the literature on those subjects. So the tarot is really cool because it, you know for a spatial person, you can access a lot of that information kind of intuitively, and that can be the basis of learning, those subjects. Let's see. Number four, I think that the tarot offers a really cool way for people to connect, in a very meaningful conversation kind of way. Like the ritual of a reading, for example, is sort of like this. Well, this kind of exposes my reading style a little bit, because this is the way I choose to approach the tarot with other people, and I know it's not the way, but I think that it does produce oftentimes these very meaningful kind of reflections, that can come about in relation to one's own identity or one's circumstances, which I guess are kind of, they're very linked like phenomena, identity and circumstance. Um, but all of these interesting components of a person and kind of like what is driving them in the moment, like what's making them tick, and kind of like what some of their challenges may be. And holding space for that is really cool. Like being able to kind of get a glimpse into people's, um, the abstract windows of human experience that are really just beyond the surface of any human. Like everyone's got this whole like abstract thing going on that's so beautiful, and being able to kind of like um, enter into a person's personal space with them, and it being a safe and constructive exercise is a really cool thing to be able to do that with people. And it really is like a privilege to be able to do that with people. Um, yeah, and the fifth is probably, for it just kind of goes without saying. I mean, reading the tarot, playing with it, even thinking about it, and what all of its ideas sort of kind of communicate in their complexity, and the arrangement, like the totality of the tarot ecosystem, and also the human tarot relationship. Is just a really interesting philosophical can of worms. I mean, it's a very interesting thing to look at how humans, from a very anthropological standpoint, relate to something like the tarot or even other things like runes. Um, and it's just a very interesting concept to explore, um, and it's very deep. It seems like there's a lot to unpack there. It's a mystery, and I think it's really cool because anyone can approach it, and I think it does in a way. I mean, at least speaking for myself, every time I do it, it's a challenge of skepticism, and I would consider myself even today, as someone who's been doing it for 5 years, to still maintain like a degree of skepticism related to the whole thing, because it's not so much like this is not happening, like this phenomena doesn't occur, but it's more of just kind of like I am sort of beside myself that this phenomena does occur, kind of thing. So, and I think that's really good. I think in a lot of ways the world today, as wonderful as it can be, it can also be somewhat like limiting in how we do perceive. I think that a lot of limitations have been set in place, like just soft limitations. They're not actual limitations, but like just the way that we perceive, and kind of saying, well, I'll see it when I see it, I'll believe it, kind of thing, or if it can't be measured, it doesn't exist, or these types of things. And I think I mean, I don't necessarily think that blind belief is a good thing, but I also think that skepticism goes both ways. You know what I mean? That's really what I mean. Is skepticism, being skeptical of one's own skepticism, even, and just kind of owning up to the fact that the map isn't the territory, and the picture is probably a lot bigger than we can conceive it being. So, yeah. So those are the five things, that I kind of wanted to start off this video with, and provide uh, possible segues into other videos. And I guess I'll just finish by saying that I really have no intentions for making these anything else other than like a very basic lecture format. What you see is what you get, kind of thing. So you can just listen and tab out if you don't want to like sit and watch a person talking at you. I totally get that. But if you like my silly facial expressions or whatever, you're welcome to watch. Um, and yeah, I look forward to seeing what feedback emerges, and I encourage you to check out my website, and thank you for watching.